evening, and thank you for coming out on such a lovely warm night in February. It's quite unusual. Anyway, I teach graphic design and art history in the art department, and this idea of doing flag designs came about last year, and I'll talk in detail about that in a little bit. But the first thing that we need to look at here is this big word, vexillology. Has anyone ever come across that word before? Some of you have. What does it mean? Well, it's a big old word. It's a study, history, symbolism, use of flags, or by extension, interest in flags in general. It comes from the Latin vexillum, which means flag. Okay, so there's a reason behind that. The term was conceived in 1957 by the U.S. scholar and student of flags Whitney Smith. And he is also the person who started the organization that I'm now a member of, NAVA, which is the North American Vexillological Association. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Why don't we just call it the Flag Club? But no, technical. So vexillography is the art of designing flags. So you can be a vexillologist, study them. You can be a vexillographer and design them, but nothing else, you can be a vexillophile, someone who is an admirer of flags, and hopefully that's all of you here tonight. So first of all, let's start off fun with flags. Yes, because people have come up to me and said, "Oh, you doing the flag presentation? Oh, it's fun with flags, like Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory." And I say, yeah. It's fun until someone takes one down, tries to change it, or burn it. It's serious business because a lot of flags are iconic. They represent a large number of people. And a lot of people have a lot of emotion invested in their own flags. Just case in point, the U.S. flag. So, when we take a look here, this became a design exercise for me. This is not something where I made flags and I said, these have to be the flags and I'm going to petition everybody and get everyone to agree with me. No, it's more like, I've got some ideas, I'll discuss them with people. I've had some people say, well, you ought to enter them into various contests. I have entered one, and I'll get to that in a moment. They were designed as an exercise to imagine and fabricate a series of flags that I, the designer, felt needed to be reworked. Flags are living designs. They're brought to life by the wind when hoisted aloft. When it's not a windy day, I see flags, they look kind of sad. But when there's a nice windy day, yeah, that's when flags really come into their own. They're meant to represent a national or regional sense, a logo, to represent the ideals of a large group of people. It's an identifier. So we all know about logos. If I say Shell logo, you know what I'm talking about. You know, if you see that on the road, you know you can go get some gasoline there and maybe a few snacks or whatever, depending on the place. And then when you see a flag, you can identify with that organization. It might be a national organization, it might be a state, it might even be a city, it might even be a city council, it might be something as small as that, but still a lot of people want to have flags to represent themselves. I mean, the most iconic use of the flag is when they landed on the moon and they put the U.S. flag on the moon, saying that, we were here first, but we come in peace for all mankind is also what they said. So there are 5 basic principles of flag design according to Good Flag, Bad Flag, a publication of NAVA, and I have a copy up here for you to look at later. These 5 basic principles were assembled, put together, based on interviews with lots of people who were flag designers, vexillographers, vexillologists, anything with vexillums, or actually the plural is vexilia. So anyway, first one, keep it simple. So simple as a child can draw it from memory. That's a really important thing, especially if it's a national flag. Make it so that a child knows what it is, rather than trying to do a detailed drawing of some kind of lion or animal or something. Make it simple. Sure, the child may like to draw animals, but you never know what they're going to look like. Okay. Use meaningful symbolism. The flag's images, colors, and patterns should relate to what it symbolizes. Okay. Number 3, 2 to 3 basic colors. Colors that contrast well. No lettering or seals. I'm reminded of that scene in the movie The Incredibles, where they said, no capes. No capes. Here, there's no seals, no words. Don't put words on it. Why? When the flag is waving like that, how do you read the words? When you have a bunch of flags all similar to each other, lined up, and they're only distinguishable by certain words, it's like, is that ours? I don't know. Kind of looks like ours. And we'll see confusion is an issue even today with international flags. Be distinctive or related. Avoid duplicating other flags, but use similarities to show connections where there are connections. Now, one thing that is interesting in flags around the world, the most common flag color combination is red, white, and blue. We don't know exactly why. Maybe people copied the US flag or the French flag, whatever flags. But that seems to be a really interesting combination that you find around the world. It might partly be due to the fact that the British had a lot of colonies and their flags red, white, and blue. And so, true, you need to be distinctive as well, but you really shouldn't have always the same colors. You'll see some differences here. So, first of all, let's talk about New Zealand. New Zealand is a place that I lived at for over 10 years. And I left there in 1999, came back to do my master's degree in the University of Idaho. But what happened, what made me start on this whole flag project is that I found out that they were having a national flag referendum. Now, what happened is that the Prime Minister, John Key, came out and said, look, I go to all of these functions overseas, and more often than not, they'll plop down an Australian flag right next to me, and I'll say, excuse me, that's not my flag. Yes, it is. No, we have a slightly different flag. The two flags get confused. And so, when we take a look at the current New Zealand flag, you can see there is what's called the Union Jack up in the corner. That part of the flag that's up in the corner is called the canton. And the part of the flag that is to the right is known as the fly. And when you put the stars in there, when you put anything into the fly and the flag, it's usually used as a term which is kind of unusual. It's called being defaced. It's not negative, it's just saying it's defaced. Meaning that there is a face and then you put something on it. So that's the current New Zealand flag. That's the current flag of Australia. Can you see where the confusion lies? Okay. Technically speaking, New Zealand came out with their flag officially 1902. Technically speaking, the flag of Australia came out, I believe it was 1955, thereabouts. They had it for a while, then finally said, yeah, that's the official one. Yeah, sure. What about those other guys? New Zealand? Oh yeah, that country, go there. Australia's relationship to New Zealand is similar to the United States' relationship to Canada. It's kind of like, oh yeah, that little country over there. Sometimes you remember them. My favorite quote about that is from Pierre Trudeau, who now has his son as Prime Minister of Canada, just recently was elected. And Pierre Trudeau said the relationship between the US and Canada is like an elephant sleeping in the bed with a mouse. No matter how kind and gentle the elephant is, when it rolls over in the middle of the night, the mouse knows about it. Okay. So that's kind of like what New Zealand and Australia have. New Zealand, 4 million people. Land area is about the same size as Colorado, except they got water around them. They are about 1,000 miles away from Australia. Australia has a population, I think, last count was around 20 million, thereabouts. So, you know, considerably larger, 5 times larger. So obviously, you know, there's a big difference. And Australia, by the way, the width of Australia is about as wide as the lower 48 states in the United States. It's a big country. A lot of it, can't do much with it. So they tend to stick to the geographic sides primarily, by the oceans, whatever. So now, the current New Zealand referendum received over 20,000 design submissions. When I first submitted my design, which is this one over here, there were only 10,000 people entered. 10,000 entries. Maybe not people, maybe multiple entries by several people. By the end of that month, when they finally closed the submissions, they had 20,000. Now, some were really nice, and some were absolutely ridiculous, looked like they did it with crayons. There was actually one, was my favorite, a lot of people's favorite. It had a kiwi bird with laser beams coming out of its eyes. It was like, that's really not a serious entry, come on. But they had a site where you can enter, and so I did. And so, like I said, I came up with this new design. Now, as you can see, I kept the 4 stars of the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross constellation is the brightest constellation in the night sky, period. North or south hemisphere. Brightest constellation. When I would drive home from work and it'd be late, I would see that constellation really bright in the sky. And so it stands out. There's even a song that was done about it. And that was Crosby, Stills, and Nash. The song, about the Southern Cross. So there's a lot of folklore around it. I kept the stars for a particular reason, and I changed the colors to say, these stars nobody owns. Nobody can claim them. One of my favorite state flags is Alaska. Alaska has the Big Dipper and Polaris. Nobody owns that. But it's something predominant in the sky that says, yeah, you see this when you're in Alaska. It's very prominent. So I kept the stars. Now, the green stripe on the bottom represents the land of New Zealand. New Zealand is a very green country. When you compare New Zealand to Australia, Australia there's a lot of dry desert areas. New Zealand's very lush, lots of ferns, trees like that. So I kept the green for the land. The white stripe is a reference to the Maori people who actually first discovered New Zealand around the year 900. They sailed across, and they were sailing, we believe, from the Cook Islands area. And they came across New Zealand, and what happened is that when you're sailing on the Pacific, as they did, you look for a cloud on the horizon that indicates land, because you have some updraft of moisture over that area. When they got to New Zealand, they said, this is a land of a long white cloud. And in Maori, it's Aotearoa. Aotearoa, land of the long white cloud. So in a way, I am honoring the first peoples who were there. And obviously, put it all together, I felt it was a good design. Now, I had this design idea for many years, but I thought, you know, well, nothing's going to happen with it. In fact, when I was teaching at Wellington Polytechnic in Wellington, New Zealand, one of my co-workers there, one of the other teachers, was the head of the Flag Association of New Zealand, and I became sort of like a, you know, auxiliary member. I wasn't like fully fledged. I didn't go to a lot of meetings or anything, but we had discussions. And we discussed about changing the flag, because a lot of people said, get rid of the Union Jack. Technically speaking, the Union Jack refers to the relationship with Great Britain. There is still one. They have a Governor General. Canada still has a Governor General. That's a representative of the Queen in that country. What do? The most important function they have is they break ties in Parliament. They break ties in Parliament. What's another function? They open bridges. They open supermarkets. They are an ambassador in a sense. And so they said, get rid of that because technically speaking, we're our own independent country, but we're part of the Commonwealth. Now, back in 1965, just a little over 50 years ago, Canada went through its own referendum. They had a flag that was one that was red with the Union Jack and corn, and then the seal of Canada. And a lot of people said, no, don't change it. We've had that forever. Technically, no. They only had it since like 1955, 56. They had similar flags, but nothing was ever settled as what is the official flag of Canada. In fact, when Canada became an independent nation in 1867, there was a poster that was done to promote in the campaign for the first Prime Minister for John Macdonald, and there he is waving a British flag. You just got your independence, but they didn't have any other flag to use, so they said, okay. Kind of like saying, well, I'm going to stick with the old boys a little bit, I guess. So what happened is they had a lot of contentions with the changing of their flag. And a lot of people hated the new design. I think everyone is familiar with the Canadian flag. In fact, the Canadian flag was originally designed, from what I understand, that there's a red maple leaf, white rectangle. White rectangle represents the snow-covered land, and the two panels on either side were not supposed to be red, they're supposed to be blue, to represent the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. What happened? A Canadian bureaucrat came along and said, you know, if you made it all red, we'd save on printing costs. Okay, fine, so. Now, I don't, trust me, I've asked about that. I'm not quite sure if that's true, but hey, it's still a good story. Anyway, they came up with the final design, and on February 15th, 1965, so we just had the 51st anniversary just on Monday, they raised the first Canadian flag. But you know what, ever since then, people are like, hey, cool, this is great, and people know it's the Canadian flag. In New Zealand, they kept pointing, look at Canada, look what they went through, look what they've got. People know it's Canada. They don't confuse it with the United States, they don't confuse it with France, they don't confuse it with anyone else. It definitely says Canada. No doubt about it. So they wanted to have their own particular design. So here we go. Here's a problem though, what happened. I contacted Neil Anderson because I realized I found something that was similar to my flag. That was his design, at least the way I thought it was. And I'm thinking, was I influenced by him? Because when I submitted, I had to put a note in, if your flag is similar to anyone else's, you must make a note of it. In other words, you shouldn't be plagiarizing. Okay. So I thought, his flag's different. Gold stripe. Mine's a white stripe. White stars. Mine are gold stars. His star is a little bit more like the actual constellation. It's not completely level. That's his actual design. I found the one on the left in a document online just a few days before I submitted. And I said, okay, here. And then I wrote his name in there, and I got an email from him saying, why did you misrepresent my flag? I said, here, look at this. He said, oh, that thing, yeah, they published it wrong, didn't they? So I thought for a moment, oh, international flag war, okay, it's not fun with flags anymore. He wrote back and he said, good luck, it's okay, there's variations on the designs. And I said, look, if I were to win, I would acknowledge you, and I hope you would do the same for me. Well, neither of us. So there's my design, so you can see, especially with the manufactured one here. So, they had a referendum. They narrowed it down to 40 flags, and then finally 4 finalists, and then all of a sudden people said, wait. these guys have a really cool flag, put it in there. And they said, no, you can't, it's too late. Yes, they had a petition made, and they put it in. Enough people signed the petition and said, we want this to be considered. Okay. Now, if you take a look at the designs, these two were designed by the same designer, Kyle Lockwood, who now lives in Australia. Well, he was from New Zealand, but he lives in Australia. Okay. And they're very similar, of course. And then there was another design by another person, and then this one here. Now, the reason for this is the silver fern. Silver fern has been iconic throughout New Zealand's history. The silver fern is an actual plant that the underside of it is white. And it's unique to New Zealand. And so, military officers, early days, would have a silver fern on their uniform to say, I'm from New Zealand. Okay. Sporting people would have that. The national rugby team, known as the All Blacks, which was a spelling mistake in a newspaper. It was supposed to be All Backs. Full backs, running backs, you know. But somebody misspelled it. And they said, you know what, our uniforms are black. So, hey, good name. In fact, they have a soccer team called the All Whites. They get in trouble all the time. You guys are racist. No, it's because we have this other team, the All Blacks. Okay. You mean all the people are black? No. No, that's not the way it works. Anyway, so the silver fern, some people said, let's just have a black flag with the silver fern on it. And other people said, no, from a distance, looks like a pirate flag. And more recently, from a distance, looks like the flag of ISIS. Oh dear. So, yes, somebody came up with this version. And as you can see here, this one has black in the corner, that has red in the corner, so there's similarities. This one is shaped like a young fern curled up, and it's known in New Zealand as a koru. And the koru is symbolic of life, that it's new life coming to be. And so it's very closely tied with Maori people. They have a lot of that in their designs as well. And so it came down to the 4+1, and they had voting that was over November and December. In fact, one of my colleagues, Claire, from the art department, our chair, she and her husband both got voting forms sent to them saying, you can vote on this. Okay. Technically, I have permanent residency status there. I'm not there now, of course, I'm here. I could have gotten one if I really asked, but I didn't. I figured, just one voice. Okay. Wait a second. No. You should vote in the election in November. I'll do what I do. Okay. All right. So, let me explain a little bit about the 5th entry. It was known as the Red Peak. Representing this A-frame, representing the Southern Alps Mountains, volcanoes that are common in New Zealand. The red represents the earth, or in Maori, papa. Yes. In fact, papa is female, like Mother Earth, but it's got that name. It's just an irony of language. The night is known as rangi, and so these colors are iconic in Maori design. These colors reflect back to the original design of the flag, the red, white, and blue. And this represents the dawn. So it's first to the light because it's the first country in the world that gets the morning light. Whenever there's Happy New Year, it's like New Zealand first. Technically, there are a few islands that maybe get it first. It's all because of the international date line that's an arbitrary line that they put down. So, the finalists is this one on the left. A little bit of the black, possibly represent the All Blacks, possibly represent the original idea of the flag with the silver fern. And now, the runoff is between the two. So they're going to do this runoff, and it's a mail-in vote in March, next month. And then we'll find out. The current polling is 60% want this one left. Why? A lot of people are doing it as a protest vote against John Key, who how should we put it, is not liked very much. As a prime minister, there's all kinds of social problems. He said, you're spending $25 billion on this referendum when we could be feeding poor kids. You could be employing people. You could be doing all kinds of things. You're wasting money. He said, but this is a long-term investment, he said. But you know, some people are voting against him rather than that. And then, of course, there are people who say, well, my grandfather fought under this flag, you know, and my great-great-grandfather fought Gallipoli under this flag and all this, you know, and there's all this history. It will still be a flag honored in history. Just like the red ensign in Canada is honored in history. But there are a lot of diehard people, a lot of people who are monarchists who just love the fact that they're still connected with the Queen. They said, well, if you're going to change it, then that means the next step is we're going to become a republic. And we're going to kick out the Queen. Well, I don't think she'll feel much. But there is that sentiment among some people. There's that same sentiment in Australia. In fact, I saw a recent design for some new Australian flag. And this person went through a whole series of different variations on it, depending on whether it was for the military, for the Navy, for the Army, all these things. And I thought it looked great. So that's another issue. You know, how do you make this so that they're specialized flags? Because quite often there are. So we will have to wait and see. Okay. So now we get to the good part, I guess. U.S. state flags. I decided after I did the New Zealand flag that it would be nice to kind of look at some of these U.S. state flags that are not exactly the best. And there are several that are indistinct from each other, lacking a neat look, to help identify them from each other. You put them all next to each other. Let's say at the Capitol building, you say, hey, where's Montana? I can't tell. It's in with all the other blue ones. So most have a dark blue field of the official seal. Most have writing, either in the seal or added later to help with recognition. Nobody knows it's our flag, so we'll stick our name on it. Twice. I'll show you. In contrast, some U.S. state flags are very unique. In fact, some U.S. state flags are so popular, you see them everywhere. Yes, that's a good cup of whatever. Yeah, have you noticed that here in Colorado? People buy t-shirts, sweatshirts, baseball caps. You know, some people say, oh, it's kind of a silly design. No, it's really popular. Are you kidding me? It really is popular. So, and I'll show you some other ones in a moment, but let me ask you. Okay, does everyone know all these flags? I know some of you should recognize this one. Right, Melissa?
Yes, Ohio.
Ohio. Ohio. Konnichiwa.
Go Bobcats.
Pardon?
Go Bobcats.
Okay. And of course, Colorado, New Mexico, one of my favorites, Alaska. How about this one? You know that one?
That's Maryland.
Maryland, yeah! Go Terrapins, right?
Yep.
Terps too.
Yeah. That one?
Arizona.
Arizona, very good. This one? Well, it's written on the flag. It says right here, Indiana, just to give you a clue. This is where they wrote all the torch songs, okay? California Republic, there's a little bit of story behind that. They were so afraid that Mexico was going to come in and take over everything. Oh, we got to declare ourselves a republic. And somebody says, okay, let's make a flag. Okay, put this little star, put the word in it, put a red stripe, and somebody, okay, put a bear on it. No. The story is, someone said, because we grow such delicious fruit, let's put a pear on it. And it was misheard. They put a bear on it. True story. California could have been the fruity state. Well, maybe it is. Okay. And of course, you know this one, right? Texas. Which is very close to looking like the country Chile. Except with Chile, they've taken this blue part, moved it up here, star up here, and that stripe goes all the way across. So be careful. All right. Now, as you can see, these flags work. They're good designs. They may not be the best designs. Some people are talking about they should change the California state flag simply because the background about how it got put together is kind of iffy. Anyway. So, New Mexico has the best designed flag of any U.S. state, territory, or Canadian province, according to a 2001 survey by this organization. I wasn't a member then, so I didn't vote. But you have to admit, very simple, very basic, relates to the culture, and it's yellow, and it's not blue. Okay. Blue's great, I love blue, but you know, too many blue flags, and it's like, you get lost in the sea. So, I made these flags purposely smaller to be seen as if from a distance. Can you recognize them? Well, some have their names on it. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry if one of you is one of the designers of one of these flags and I'm insulting you. Or maybe you're from that state, you know, you might go, yeah, improve it, will you? Okay, we can see Montana. Montana, they actually had just the state seal, and one time they said, nobody knows who we are. Just put our name on it. And then a few years later he said, let's have a debate as to which typeface goes on now. Okay. Oregon, okay, the name. Kansas, yes. Well, which one's this? Can you read it? No, not even at a distance, even if it's standing still. Nebraska. Yeah. This one? This is one where they put the name on twice. The state seal has a name, and then they put a little banner underneath, and they both say, State of Idaho. Or as one of my friends overseas said, hey, you're going back to grad school, where are you going? I said, Idaho. And they said, what do you mean you don't know? They didn't even know about the potatoes. Okay. What's this one? It's going to be really important very soon. Nevada, coming up with the elections. This one?
Washington.
How'd you guess?
I saw the talk before.
And it's George Washington, I'm not sure with or without his teeth. But anyway. So all I have to say is, let's take a look at the first one here. So Kansas, here's the current flag. Ad astra per aspera. To the stars we aspire. Okay, cool. And then it's like, my question is, where the heck are the mountains in Kansas? This is in Colorado.
Colorado in the distance.
Colorado from Kansas.
In the distance.
In the distance. Okay. Or maybe just after plowing, they're down in the... You know, we can laugh about it, but this is a state flag. You should be proud of the state. You know, it's like, I don't see people wearing these on t-shirts all over the place. They'll wear shirts from Kansas State and other institutions, but not Kansas itself. All right. And they had to put the name up. And then there's a guy plowing a field, and there's a wagon train heading to Oregon. And some buffalo and a steamboat. Do they have steamboats?
Yes, on the eastern side.
On the eastern side.
On the Missouri.
On the river.
Okay. So here's my new design.
Yeah.
Let's just stick
There
with
you
the
go.
sunflower. It's
I like
the
it.
state flower. Make it simple. Now, maybe all the petals might be difficult for kids to draw, but at least they can recognize it from a distance. So I got the green of the land, the blue of the sky, and then here's the sunflower. You could recognize it in a large group, couldn't you? Now, most of the flags I've designed, I brought with me tonight, and so we can see these a little bit later if you want to see them up close. Okay, here's another one. Idaho. What did I tell you? I don't know. Great seal of the state of Idaho. By the way, it's the state of Idaho. Idaho. Okay. Now, I was there for graduate school. It's a beautiful state. I was up in the area which is Moscow, Idaho, which is up in the panhandle of Idaho. Why is the panhandle there? because it's a strip of land that neither Washington or Montana wanted. But it's actually quite beautiful. If you ever get up to Sandpoint's a beautiful location up in Idaho. The Lake Pend Oreille up there is one of the deepest freshwater lakes in the country, and they actually do submarine testing because it's far away from the prying eyes of the Russians or whoever else. Okay, so now I came up with this design. Why? Okay, first of all, Idaho is the gem state. But even today, people don't know where the name came from. At one point, Colorado was going to be called Idaho. It was in the legislature before it became a state. What are we going to call this land? Well, let's call it Idaho. Are you sure? What does the name mean? And they tried to look it up, and nobody knew. Nobody knew, could figure it out. Well, we got Idaho Springs. Well, that's not good enough. Some people said, well, maybe it was a steamer boat, and they weren't quite sure. So the state of Idaho picked it up and said, we don't care. We'll go with Idaho. And so we went with Colorado here because of the red rocks. Colorado in Spanish means reddish rocks or red colored. And so we went with that. Nice, okay. So Idaho does this. So they call themselves the gem state. What's the #1 gem there? The star garnet. And this is what a star garnet looks like. When the light hits it, it gets a beautiful star shape. So I did this star shape, kept the oval, which is typical of the star garnets when they're put in the settings, and I put red and white stripes that kind of allude to the United States again. Now some person came up and said, but star garnets are red. And I said, no. There are rare ones that are blue or purple. So what I'm saying is, Idaho is a rare gem. Maybe they'll buy it, I don't know. Some people say, why don't you put a potato on there? I'm like, okay. They even have it on the license plate, famous potatoes. All right. Now we get to Montana, our neighbor to the north here. Current flag looks like this. And like I said, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Sure, there's mountains, they deserve to have mountains. And then they have some mining equipment, some vague thing written in Latin, and it almost looks like, at least this version that a school child probably put together is like in a hurry. But that's a state seal, okay? But like this little guidebook said, yeah, state seal, it's hard to see. Let's make it simpler. Let's make it even simpler. Mountains and an M, ta-da, Montana. You'd recognize that from a distance, wouldn't you? Okay. Now, like I said, these are design exercises. I'm not saying you're going to rush up to the state legislature and say, hey, you got to have this, because I know what I'm talking about. They might look at me and say, we'll put it on the docket. Then we have Washington, good old Washington. The seal of the state of Washington, 1889. The only state in the United States named after a president. Except Colorado at one point was known as Jefferson Territory. So we could have been called the state of Jefferson. And so the rest is history. But, you know, it's kind of, oh yeah. He doesn't look too thrilled to be on the flag, does he? One of the problems, too, with a flag that has an image like that, you have to recreate that image again on the backside. And that is a problem sometimes, because it's like printing it twice. Whereas if you have, like, the previous flag, Montana, you print it once, you don't have to print the backside. So, my design, keep the circle, put mountains in the middle, and have a W in here for Washington. Some people say, doesn't it look like Montana? Well, they are neighbors. I don't think they'd mind. But I kept the green, you know, 2 colors of green, keep it simple. And some people say, well, is it a logo? Well, yeah, why not have it be a logo of the state? Why not? What's wrong with logos? All right, then we get Oregon. Oregon is unusual because it has 2 sides to its flag. Did you know that? Okay, this side has a wagon train. Yes, the settlers came by wagon over to Oregon Territory. And it's got a sunset and ships in the distance. And I don't know, what is it? Is this the Statue of Liberty drowning in the water? It's hard to see. No, I think it's, well, it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see. Now, it has two sides, yes. Here's the reverse side. You got a beaver. So you're driving down the street looking for the flag of Oregon. I just see the beaver flag. Oh, wait. It is a beaver state, isn't it? I think it is. Okay. All right. Now, I'll have to say this. There was a gentleman years ago on television who was performing some music. He said, I'm from Canada. You know, in Canada, on our 5-cent coin, on our nickel, we have a picture of a beaver. And why is that? Because there are beavers all across Canada. In fact, beaver pelts were once hunted by the first fur trappers and went across. And so the beaver was important for opening up the country. You know, and beavers make dams. They make dams here and make dams there. Just goes to show you that Canada is the best dam country in the world. Okay? Everyone has the right to their own opinion. So, here's my new design. Stick with the iconic wagon, but don't do a whole full-blown Conestoga wagon. You just stick with the wheel. Now, the blue stripe here represents the rivers, and there's two major rivers. You have the Willamette, goes north-south, and then you got the Columbia, goes east-west, which is the border with Washington State. So it kind of makes sense. You have to take your wagon and cross the river sometimes, don't you? Okay. So I just felt, you know, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Nebraska. Anyone here from Nebraska? I haven't sold anyone tonight. Gene, where's Gene? Gene Schilling, my colleague, who grew up in Nebraska. Okay. Here's the flag. Even now, it's kind of hard to see what's there. Okay, Great Seal of the State of Nebraska, March 1st, 1867. Okay. A couple months ahead of Canada's independence, which is July 1st, 1867. Okay. Johnny hammering here, little house on the prairie, I guess. And again, there are mountains in the background of Nebraska. Okay, some people say maybe it's the sand dunes in the distance. Because in the western part, they do have a lot of sand dunes or sandy area. I've never been there. But here's my idea. Whoa, really simple. Wow. Nebraska, in the native language, means flat river. And then what happened is that the first people through there were some of the French explorers, and they said, oh yeah, you're right, Platte River. But in French it's spelled P-L-A-T-E, plate. So somebody else came along and said, nah, that doesn't sound right, it's Platte, put an extra T in there. So it is a flat river. So this symbolizes the river, but why the star way over here in what's called the fly of the flag? Because this is where the majority of people live, this is where the state capital is, this is where Omaha is. I'm sorry if you live over in this part of the state, but more influence is over here. But it does make it a much more distinctive design than sticking it where most people get left or in the center. But over here, yeah, might be interesting. And I did get the seal of approval from Gene Schilling. Simple but effective. Nevada. And I understand you're supposed to pronounce it Nevada, not Nevada. Because you're in Nevada, they'll say, no, that's not the way you pronounce it. Well, that's at least what they tell me. So with Nevada, that's the current flag. Nevada became a state in October of 1864. During the Civil War, they rushed it through. Why? So they could have a couple more extra electoral votes to try to re-elect Lincoln. That's the story. And that's why it says battle born, because that was the time period. Okay? So they have some native plants here, have this banner, then you got a star, and it says Nevada. Oh, yeah, well, you have to put the name on it because nobody knows who it is, right? So, my design is like this. Why? It's the silver stake. The silver, and then the bright blue sky, and then keep that star instead of making it gray, make it a white star, put it up there. I think if you were to fly that, people would say, yeah, cool. But you know what, sometimes a flag like this might not be approved or liked by some people because they say it's too simple. I said, fine. Look at the flag of France. They didn't do much work on that, did they? Look at the flag of Japan. Heck, red circle. Are you kidding me? Boy, not a lot of thought behind that one. Well, there was, but there are reasons, you know, to make it distinctive enough. So it's not necessarily copying exactly what other people are doing. So I'm not going to ask you to vote on these, you know, that's a different thing. Mississippi. When I started on this project, about a month or so into it, there were the shootings that happened in South Carolina. All of a sudden, it's like this person who did the shooting said, I identified with this Confederate flag. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, you know, suddenly people, it just seemed like everyone woke up. I said, this is not really a good flag to fly. What is it symbolizing? We need to change that. We need to take the flag down. That's why I say it's fun with flags until you want to take one down. People go, no, my great-great-grandfather fought on that flag, you know, and it was all about states' rights. And yeah, which right was it? Number one was to keep slaves. That was the number one states' right. And a lot of that gets obscured because of the fact that after the Civil War, the South had to go through Reconstruction. People wanted to feel good about themselves again, and then some people latched onto this flag and said, yes, let's use this. We can rally around this one. But Mississippi's current flag still has the Confederate battle flag. The original Confederate battle flag was square. And then later on, another battalion, I think it was in Tennessee, if I get it straight, I can't remember. Anyway, they did an elongated one, or rectangular. Now, other states have had allusions to this X, which is also known as a salt here. And, for example, Alabama, white flag with a red X on it, which is very close to looking at like the flag of St. Patrick. Okay, but it's still kind of like, well, it still has that. Okay, Scotland has a blue flag with a white X. Okay. Florida looks just like Alabama, except the state seal of Florida is in the middle. So there's all kinds of flags that have similarities. In fact, Georgia originally had the Confederate battle flag in its flag, and a few years ago they finally changed it. I don't have it here. You can Wikipedia it later. So, what's the story? This was the original Confederate national flag, March 4th, 1861. And this is the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia, November 28th, 1861. Now, one of the reasons why they came up with a battle flag is because a lot of people said the national flag looks too much like the Northerners' flag, and people were getting confused, running to the wrong side, going across the back. Oh, wait, no, that's not our flag. Run the other way. Run the other way. And they had to use flags in battles. They had to show where your group was. It was a way to communicate. They didn't have radios. So they communicated with the types of flags they had, and a battle flag was important. Then, May 1st, 1863, they came up with the second Confederate national flag. And this flag, all white, with the battle flag. Okay. Some people say it had nothing to do with it, or it was a national flag. Well, technically, the second one. It was incorporated into that. And then they realized from a distance, it looks like we're surrendering, because it's a white flag. So they added a red stripe. But that was March 4th, 1865. The war was almost over by then. Almost over. It was like another month, and then Appomattox was the end of the war. In fact, there's a little story about the Appomattox courthouse where they signed the surrender terms. When the first Battle of Bull Run happened, the man who owned the land that they fought on decided, I don't want to be in a battle anymore. So he moved. He moved to Appomattox. The war started in his front yard and ended in his parlor. True story. Anyway. William T. Thompson, designer or co-designer of the Second Confederate flag, said this: as a people, we're fighting to maintain the heaven-ordained supremacy of the white man over the inferior or colored race. A white flag should thus be emblematic of our cause. Such a flag would soon take rank among the proudest ensigns of the nations and be hailed by the civilized world as a white man's flag. I think case closed here. You may love Dukes of Hazzard, but over a period of time, we've become distant from history. We forget about what certain things mean. And then we are refreshed in the meaning and find out, wait a second, there are still people who fear that battle flag, who see that, especially when people or organizations like the Ku Klux Klan picked it up and said, let's use that. In Germany today, it is illegal. You can be arrested and put in jail if you display a swastika. If you do anything to display anything about the Second World War and the swastika. The swastika used to be a peace and good luck symbol. So much so that one time when I was living in Copenhagen, Denmark, I went to the Carlsberg Brewery. And they have a brewery tour there almost every day. I walked in early, saw some displays of pictures from times past and of beer labels, and there's some beer labels from the 1920s and before, and they all had swastikas on them. What? And I went up, and there's a fellow at the front desk, and he said, yeah, come with me. And he showed me in the entryway, picked up this mat, and there's a big swastika on the tile. He said, we have to cover it up. People think we're anti-Semitic if we don't do it. You know, we have to, well. And if you go to some places like Pueblo High School, the whole floor is done with swastikas in the front lobby area, all in the tile. Because it was a Native American symbol too. So, India, from India, that part of the world, and also local Native Americans, they somehow latched on that, and it was done forwards and backwards. It's been corrupted. And now, I feel this flag, even before this time, was already corrupted, but we just had to have it thrown in our face again and say, let's look at what the history is. It's all about history and heritage. Yeah, look it up. Look it up. So, if you want to have a flag like that and display it in your home, fine. But if you have it outside your house, I think some people might go, what are their political affiliations, and should I be afraid? You know, because it does stand for something, whether you believe in that aspect or not. People will see the difference. So, current flag, here's my new design. I keep the horizontal red and white stripes. It alludes back to the original Confederate national flag, but without insulting people. There's still a bit of heritage there. And then a big blue stripe down the middle to represent the Mississippi River. And then I put a gray star in there to represent the gray of the Confederate uniforms in the star. So there's some aspects of history people can be proud of without displaying something that really can be offensive. Although I had one comment saying, oh, so this Confederate soldier is crossing the river? Maybe. Why not? They crossed a lot of rivers when they fought in the Civil War. I'm now considering doing another design because right now in Mississippi, they are talking about changing it. Nothing official yet, it's just talk. And back last summer, when all this was happening, there was an article came up on the internet, and it was one of the local newspapers. And they said, we want to have your ideas. And I said, I didn't want. I don't think anything's going to come of it. But at least it's in their, database somewhere. But like I said, I'm thinking about considering changing it because a lot of people say, put a magnolia tree in there. That's what we used to have on an older flag. But if you have this kind of lumpy tree, it's kind of hard to see what it is. I'm thinking, how about a magnolia flower stylized? And then put it there. So I'm thinking about maybe doing the same design and just put the magnolia right in the center of the water. Maybe have a star in there, I'm not sure. Still playing around with the idea, because it has to look right. It has to be something that you look at it and go, yeah, that's cool, rather than, what's it supposed to be? Because as I tell my students in graphic design, you have to get the message across almost instantaneously. And the example I give usually is, imagine the Picasso designed stop signs. You would have accidents all over the place. But, hey, what is that? I don't know. Does it say stop? Well, it kind of, there's a thing hanging like this, and there's up here, down here, and a nose over here. Next thing you know, you have an accident. So you have to do something that has an immediate impact. Okay. So there are the flags that I've done. Last summer, I tell you, I was like, I found out about the organization NAVA. I submitted a brief to them, an abstract, and they said, yeah, you can present. Wow, in October, great. In Canada, where I'm from, great. Ottawa, the capital, even greater. Wow, fantastic. And having the support of Adams State and having a little bit of money behind that too, even better. So I went there and I presented basically the same presentation to them, except I only had 25 minutes. And I see it gone for about an hour now. Okay. Or as my students have asked me, Professor, do you teach math? I said, why do you ask? I said, well, you keep going off on tangents. Okay, I'll remember that. So in preparation of that, I was looking around for a place to actually fly these flags so I can take pictures. And it's like, not this, And out front of Richardson, they were doing a remodel, no flagpole. So I'll wait until they put the flagpoles in. Well, now they're saying, we won't take them down ever, because now we have lights on them. My solution, Monte Vista Golf Course. They had a PGA flag, and I said, can I just put up a, oh yeah, sure, go ahead, because they had a rope easy, you get it, pull them. The flags that we have outside of Richardson are actually done in such a way that they're locked off, and so nobody can try to pull them down, or change them or anything like that, or burn them, or pretending we're doing fun with flags again. So I was trying to get pictures of them out in the light, but last summer it was really weird. Either there was no wind whatsoever, or there was so much wind, and the skies got cloudy, so here we go. So at least I got something. Now, I found a place where you can animate them, because they need to move. They are living things, okay? So you can see they work. You don't have to read anything. You don't have to read anything. Now, one little thing I'm going to do here at the end is, when I went to that conference, I got a couple of these patches. In fact, when I became a member, they sent me the official flag of the North American Dialogical Association. I don't know who designed it, but it's a cute little flag, and it's red, white, and blue. So it includes all the colors of U.S. and Canada. It's primarily U.S. and Canada. And so I got one of these patches. So I can make one of you an honorary member, but you'll have to pass the test. I have a little quiz. Have you been taking notes? Good, because it has nothing to do with what I was talking about. So this is the organization I mentioned, and I went to that conference up in Ottawa, and there is a link to their site. It's very simple, nava.org. $40 a year membership. Okay. But now, we're going to play the game. Name the flags. Now, students, if you know the names, raise your hand. There are two flags, two different flags. You must name where they are from. Okay? Sounds like a drum roll outside. Here we go. You know one of them?
I know one of them.
You know both of them? What are they?
St. Lucia and South Africa.
Very good. Let's give him a... I am proud to do this patch because I am surprised. I thought people were going to say, the Starfleet Federation. People know me. I like Star Trek, Star Wars, all that stuff. But South Africa, I chose because there was a designer at an international conference in Switzerland one time, and he heard they wanted to have a new flag, and he came up with this design, and almost everyone loved it immediately. It's representing, in some ways, some of the old flag. I can show you that later if you want. That the old flag had blue on the bottom, white in the middle, red on top, and it was relationship to the flag of Holland. And so they had that because people there speak Afrikaans, which is a variation on Dutch. And then we have the black representing black people, gold, progressive, but things coming together. We come together as a people. And sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 colors. Okay, it bends the rules of the good flag, bad flag pamphlet. But as I was talking to the one who compiled it at this conference, he said, it wasn't meant to be a strict thing. And I said, yes, I understand that. But it does help when you're thinking about your own designs of flags, whether you're going to be successful with it or not. Don't get too complicated, but don't be too simple, okay? Don't do just a white flag, because people will confuse that with surrender. And don't just use a black flag. That means you're trying to get rid of cockroaches in your house. Okay? So, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.